Welcome to New Light Living Podcast. I'm Ulrika Sullivan. I'm an intuitive spiritual life coach and a galactic astrologer. This video is a galactic reading of the full moon in Sagittarius at 13 degrees on June 3rd, 2023. So I welcome you to this reading, opening up your perspective to the multidimensional perspective of the galactic heritage and connections and influences from cosmos that we have. If you're familiar with traditional astrology, this reading is providing you with the outer layer, if you will, our connections to fixed stars, other points, planetary bodies that may not always be discussed in traditional astrology. So welcome. I also want to say thank you for the overwhelming response and positive feedback I received for my previous video, the Galactic Astrology reading I did for the new moon, the most recent new moon. So that inspired me to come back and provide this reading for the full moon. So I just want to say thank you if you're new. Thank you for being here. Thank you if you're coming back once more. And if you've been here before, I'm so happy to be able to do this work and this reading for you. So let's dive in. So what you have here is the chart for the full moon in Sagittarius at 13 degrees. And it's exact on June 3rd. What you're going to notice is that I will bring out three themes that I see are really key when it comes to our galactic influence of energy, if you will. And if we start at the top of the chart here, the moon is conjunct the Great Attractor, which is also a black hole, if you will. It's considered one of the major forces of energy that makes the universe go round. Is one of the bigger ones. It's not the biggest force, but the Great Attractor is really associated with expansion. And that's the keyword I'm going to use for the Great Attractor today, because Sagittarius as an archetype energy is really about exploration, expansion. And I feel strongly that the Great Attractor is part of our desire to expand and explore and evolve. And opposite, as in all full moons, you have the sun at 13 degrees of Gemini. And this energy, I want to point out one thing that stands out about this full moon from a moon and sun perspective. If you see here, up here, Antares is opposite Aldebaran. And when we talk about Aldebaran and Antares, we often refer to the stargate in the universe that where we can, as a soul, traverse between the Milky Way galaxy and the Andromeda galaxy. And this is an important portal that is opening up to this wider cosmic energy at this point. And as you can see, Antares and Aldebaran, they are around 10 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini, respectively. But I kind of include them here in this perspective because you'll see the reason why in a minute. Now, another theme here that I really want to point out is, as we talked about in the new moon video last week, the highlight around Pluto. And Pluto has now started its retrograde back to Capricorn. Still at this full moon, Pluto is at 0 degrees, but in reverse, in retrograde. And that is a suggestion to us to start reflecting upon the energies of Lyra and Aquila, which is conjunct still, of course, Pluto. Pluto hasn't moved that far since the new moon in Taurus, last video I made. But what I highlighted there was Pluto's alignment to energy, archetypal energy of Lyra and Aquila, which is in this case, Aladfar really is a archetypal energy of more masculine energy, but also around leadership, a masculine way of leading. And whatever comes to your mind when I say that, that is what we're thinking of here. So Pluto is still highlighting this need for a shift in this area. The T-square is still maintained between Pluto, and at the bottom of the chart, you see the North Node at 2 degrees of Taurus. And now Jupiter is ahead of the North Node at 4 degrees of Taurus. And what that means when when Jupiter is conjunct the North Node is it also signifies a portal of expansion. I should also say that Jupiter is ruling this full moon because the full moon in Sagittarius is really Jupiter's domain. So Jupiter is here to guide us into the future, conjunct with the North Node. And the North Node is opposite the South Node, as always. And the South Node is still conjunct the Shapley Attractor. If you look at the very top of the chart here, one of the most massive forces in the universe that makes it all go around billions of galaxies. And really the energy signature here is that the Shapley Attractor is really the influencer, the most deeply wise influencer in the universe at this point. And it's conjunct the South Node, which means that there's a lot that we are suggested to release, things that we may have held on to for a long time. So the South Node conjunct Haumea is really asking us to consider bringing in the feminine principle, if you will. And we talked about that in the new moon in Taurus video, so I won't go deeper on that here, but that dynamic is still maintained. Now, I want to point out also that if you look up to the Leo area here, you can see Venus is actually in Mars's place. Mars has continued into Leo now, but Venus is all about Venus is almost entering Leo actually on June 5th. So she's finishing up her journey in Cancer. And at this full moon, Venus is conjunct the constellation Canis Minor, and specifically the fixed star Procyon. And I wanted to just highlight that within this T-square, this theme of what we're suggested to consider, because now when Venus is there, instead of Mars, which was at the new moon, Venus conjunct Procyon is suggesting to go further deeper into our body, because Procyon is a signature, an energy signature of bringing in new forms of technology, sometimes favoring science over spirituality. But I feel strongly that Procyon is here, and I'll tell you why in a second, to allow us to come further into, allow us to further connect to our body consciousness. And what I'm sensing here is that what we're suggested to consider is different ways of feeling what we need. Let's say from an illness perspective, even. Our body is telling us way before the mind has figured it out what is the matter with us, what's the issue is potentially. And this energy signature of Procyon is suggesting us to consider new ways, new forms of getting information in a more feminine way, such as tapping into our body consciousness. So the dynamic have changed since Mars was in direct opposition to Pluto, and Venus is bringing in the additional layer of what that feminine leadership is going to bring into us. And once she steps into Leo on June 5th and makes an exact opposition to Pluto, that is going to allow us to actually feel that from the heart perspective. Leo is all about sovereignty, leading from the heart. And I feel that this is a strong signature of Venus really bringing in, at this full moon, the consideration of the body and body awareness. I also want to say that Neptune is part of the dynamic here. Neptune is down here at 27 degrees of Pisces. And we talked about last time that Neptune is really squaring the galactic center at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And that is a call for growth. It's a call, it's a gate, it's a gate stopper, if you will. A square can be that growth opportunity. And Neptune is here to support this galaxy. The galactic center is the wisdom kind of black hole that drives our Milky Way galaxy. And so Neptune is really the spiritual gatekeeper here in that square. He is maintaining a trine to Venus, and to some extent Mars as well, wide trine here. But I sense that he is definitely the overseer, and including bringing those spiritual tools, if you will, closer into the body, so that we can actually use the body as a dial, if you will. Now, the second theme involves Mercury and Uranus. And if you look at the bottom of the chart here, Mercury and Uranus are conjunct at 19-20 degrees of Taurus. And what does this mean? I included the asteroid Astraea as well. And there's a reason for me including that because she is conjunct Mercury and Uranus and Taurus at this moment. And if you recall, at the new moon in Taurus, in the last video I did, Mercury was opposite the Shapley attractor in his position at that time. Now he has moved on and is conjunct with Uranus at the full moon. So the way I translate this is that back at the new moon in Taurus, Mercury was there to gather information, receive a download, or even allow himself to kind of, what is it that I want to communicate now? When he is conjunct Uranus, it's time for that big epiphany, that big download. And Mercury actually now is also trine to the Lyra constellation in Capricorn. And you can see here on the chart, almost all of Capricorn is covered by Lyra fixed star alignment. But it's a really strong trine to the Lyra constellation that Mercury and Uranus is maintaining at this full moon. And what does that mean? Now Mercury and Uranus are collaborating because they really are both about communication. And with Uranus there, it expands, it brings us into the cosmos and bringing that Lyra conversation really up to the surface. because Lyra is somewhat of a cradle for our forefathers of humanity, really. So Lyra has a long galactic history with multiple generations of colonies, lots of movement that has happened since the Lyra constellation formed, if you will. So many of us have galactic history with Lyra, and Lyra has a dynamic past with both harmony and balance, but also polarity and galactic wars over time. So now that information, that cosmic download, if you will, is coming to the surface through Mercury and Uranus being conjunct here at the bottom of the chart, providing a trine to the Lyra constellation. It's meant to provide information to the future direction that we're manifesting, because Taurus is all about manifesting. It's the things that we can see and touch. So it's manifestation time, basically. So the information that we have from the Lyra constellation is flowing through to the North Node, Jupiter, Mercury, and Uranus are there. Astraea is in the mix. And why do I bring up Astraea? Astraea is a feminine leader, that an asteroid that represents this archetypal energy of calm, peaceful relationships. Astraea also stands for simplicity, and she is the goddess of purity, goodness, morality, and justice. So Astraea is here to bring in a new way of manifesting a new direction. And there is no coincidence that she's at 18 degrees and Mercury is at 19 degrees and Uranus is just next to both of them at 20 degrees of Taurus. It's a crowded house there in Taurus, but there is a reason for that. There's information that we're receiving from our galactic forefathers that is traveling through that trine down to us now to be able to transmute and transform past information into a new direction. The third theme I would like to highlight for you is a kite formation. So bear with me here. I'm going to walk you through this kite and translate that from a galactic perspective. Look at the moon and the sun at 13 degrees here in Sagittarius and Gemini, respectively. Sun and the moon are conjunct the stargate, Antares opposite Aldebaran, which has been in galactic history a very important passageway for multidimensional information between our Milky Way galaxy and our sister galaxy, Andromeda galaxy. Look at Chiron in his position there at 18 degrees of Aries. And we talked about that in the last video. Chiron is currently in Aries conjunct the constellation Cetus and the fixed star Tau Ceti. Tau Ceti was marked by also male dominance leadership. And it's an archetypal energy that we have many wounds that we need to heal around in our galactic soul history. So there's no coincidence that Chiron at this time is conjunct a fixed star that is has a heritage, a galactic heritage around dominant male leadership. I want you to pay attention here to the Leo placements here, because the Leo is pretty crowded here at this full moon. And there's a reason for that, because opposite in this kite formation, you have a trine from the moon to Chiron. You have a trine from Chiron up to Pallas Athene and Lilith. More exact, if you will, or closer to a trine than actually what Venus and Mars are, where they are placed right now. But they will, and Pallas Athene and Lilith, I pulled those out in the chart because it really, truly is a fire grand trine here. And why do I want to include Pallas Athene and Black Moon Lilith in this conversation? It is a call for us to balance our male dominant leadership with feminine leadership, more authentic being of leadership. And Pallas Athene, both Pallas Athene and both Pallas Athene and Black Moon Lilith stands for more of a authentic feminine leadership. And in Leo, it's all about living that feminine leadership, in a peaceful way, in a receptive way. And Lilith, Black Moon Lilith here, that really stands for that authentic leadership, if you will. Pallas Athene is more of that peaceful, calm, feminine leadership. So those two in collaboration with each other in this fire grand trine is giving us the build to the kite. The bottom of the kite, and that really sends the direction of this kite, is the sun. The sun fires up this kite to go in the direction of the moon and into expansion of Sagittarius, using that great attractor energy, that stargate energy. So at the bottom of the kite is the sun conjunct Aldebaran. And the sun provides this curiosity. It's the sun is in an air sign, Gemini, here at this full moon, but all the passion and the fire and the direction of expansion is provided by the moon, Chiron, and Black Moon Lilith and Pallas Athene in this fire trine, if you will. So here we are taking off into a direction. At this full moon, we're releasing that inner power, inner passion and creativity into a new direction set by Jupiter conjunct the North Node. And the download comes from that cosmic interaction between Mercury and Uranus, and Astraea coming in there with her peaceful relationships, the feminine principle. And it's worth to notice too that Venus, at the time of this solar eclipse back in December, 18 months ago, Venus was conjunct the Lyra ring nebula in Capricorn at the very bottom of the chart, in this chart, and pretty much conjunct Astraea as well. So she's here with the time clock and say, okay, now it's time to bring in the feminine, calm leadership, feminine relationships based on receptivity, equal exchange, balance, and so on. So I just thought this would be a little, note to bring up, this link of this full moon in Sagittarius at 13 degrees with the new moon in Sagittarius at 12 degrees back in December 2021. What did you start in 2021 in December? This is a culmination. This full moon in Sagittarius on June 3rd, 2023 is a culmination of what you started in 2021 in December. So let's take a look, just a quick look on what the connection is between that new moon in Sagittarius at 12 degrees, as it was, with this full moon at 13 degrees of Sagittarius. So let's take a look. So here we are. This is the chart for the new moon in Sagittarius. It was a solar eclipse on December 4th, 2021 at 12 degrees. So this is the chart and the galactic alignments that and the energies that were working with the solar eclipse at that time, 18 months ago. I want to point out a couple of things for you to consider here. The sun and the moon was at 12 degrees of Sagittarius, conjunct the Great Attractor, of course. This is the location of the full moon that's coming up. And again, the stargate Antares, Aldebaran was engaged at that new moon. I want to point out that the north node position and the south node position, the north node was at 1 degree of Gemini, as you can see up there in the 8th house, conjunct the Pleiades. And what does this mean? Pleiades at the time, 18 months ago, we received new directions, new energy from the Pleiades, conjunct the North Node at the time, about what's to come. Our sisters and brothers in the Pleiades are functioning at this time as somewhat of a guide for many of us. And at that time, 18 months ago, on December 4th, in the solar eclipse there, we received some downloads and direction from our guides, conjunct the Pleiades at the time. So the focus of that new moon was to set a new direction, and the North Node and the alignment to Pleiades highlights that. At the time of the solar eclipse, Mercury was conjunct the Great Attractor. And as you can see, with the moon and the sun there at 12 degrees, Mercury was at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, which was almost exactly conjunct the Great Attractor. What does that mean? Well, Mercury at the time was collecting all the information and how to communicate this and how to formulate this new direction. And the sun and moon conjunct Mercury is always a very information-rich situation, especially at the new moon. So just notice that alignment. We talked earlier about Procyon and its suggestion to move closer into and becoming more aware of our body and spiritual technology as well, not necessarily spiritual technology, but new forms of technology that can support our body awareness. So Canis Minor, which is currently Venus is aligned to at this full moon in June 2023, Pluto was aligned to Procyon back in December 2021. So that opposition of Pluto to Procyon at the time, 18 months ago, was suggesting to us that, maybe there is something new we need to consider. Maybe we need to start listening to our body and bring in new ways to do that, to include the body in the messaging system of what we are considering. So Pluto was here at the time, 18 months ago, to suggest this is something that we should consider. Also, if you take a look here, Pallas Athena here at 10 degrees of Pisces at the time actually was squaring the new moon. And if you recall, Pallas Athena is now part of that grand fire trine that we have at this full moon now in June. But at the time, 18 months ago, she was in a square to the new moon, which means that the feminine leadership that was suggested at the time wasn't fully accepted or included or considered, if you will. So Pallas Athene was there to kind of, okay, challenge this new moon 18 months ago to please consider the feminine principle in leadership. This full moon in Sagittarius at 13 degrees on June 3rd, 2023, is really allowing us to consider the feminine principle, allowing that to be part of the conversation, bringing in our body awareness, and very much so bring that into the future direction that Jupiter is setting the stage for, allowing this full moon to fly, to fly that kite, being that expansion, conjunct the Great Attractor in Sagittarius, really to take off and help us now. This kite is asking us, help us now to balance this male dominant leadership with female, more receptive, so that the balance can come in to our lives, in both internally, but also in the collective. This full moon, the kite of the full moon, is fired up by the sun in Gemini. That provides that extra fuel, that extra curiosity, that extra communication that we need to take off. So, what are some of the questions that you can ask yourself to work with this energy of this full moon in Sagittarius? The first question is, how can you expand the balance between masculine and feminine leadership within yourself? And also what you do, what you bring out to the collective. What is that inner fire? Remember that fire trine that I pointed out. What is it based on self-love? And the second question is, how can you engage your body's messaging system? And that is really the archetypal energy of Procyon aligned to Venus at this time. She's bringing the body awareness into the mix as she walks into Leo on June 5th. The third question for you is, how can you manifest through balance, calm, rest, and energetic alignment? And here we're guided by Astraea coming in to allow us to open up to that multidimensional perspective through that download via Uranus and Mercury conjunct at this full moon. So I hope that has provided you with some inspiration, something that you can take with you and work with now during this full moon. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Ulrika Sullivan. I'm an intuitive spiritual life coach and galactic astrologer. And if you're curious, visit me on my website, ulrikasullivan.com. Everything is there. Look around, and I welcome you to hit subscribe, like, share this video. If there's anyone that you feel need to know this information or that would enjoy this information. Thank you so much. See you soon.